Hello all and welcome back to my channel. I'm Dr. McKay and this video is part 2 of my history of NASA spaceflight, Space Engineers Recreation. Today's history lesson is about the Mercury Atlas rocket and its first crew flight around the Earth, so let's get started. So, after the Mercury Redstone mission with Freedom 7 with Alan Shepard and Liberty Bell 7 with Gus Grissom, in May and July of 1961, NASA needed to push for the next goal, to successfully send a man into orbit around the Earth and safely bring him back to Earth. To achieve this goal, NASA needed a more powerful rocket than the Redstone launch vehicle. Enter the Atlas LV-3B. This rocket, originally designed as an intercontinental ballistic missile, a weapon of mass destruction, was the only choice for the orbital mission. As the only orbit-capable US rocket in its arsenal, NASA decided the Atlas was the rocket it needed. The Atlas had been originally designed as a weapon system, thus its design and reliability did not need to necessarily be 100% perfect, with Atlas launches too frequently ending in explosion. As such, significant steps had to be taken to human rate the missile to make it safe and reliable for manned missions. After many months of refinements, the rocket was ready. After the successful completion of the Mercury Atlas V flight that carried Enos, a chimpanzee, in late November 1961, NASA announced the pilot of the first American to orbit the Earth, the astronaut John Glenn. Glenn would pilot the Friendship 7 Mercury capsule on the first flight in orbit. NASA hoping to launch during 1961. On November 30th, 1961, the Atlas rocket arrived at the Cape, but after delays, hardware issues and weather, the launch was pushed back to February 20th, 1962. On this date, Glenn would make history as the first American to orbit the Earth. So let's run down the specifications of the launch vehicle and mission profile before we recreate the launch in Space Engineers. The rocket is comprised of 3 parts: the Mercury capsule, where Glenn would pilot, the first stage booster, the Atlas, which stood at 28.7 meters tall, with a diameter of 3 meters. It had one Rocketdyne XLR 1055 engine that put out 81,655 pounds of thrust for 5 minutes. But the Atlas had something the Redstone didn't: a half stage or boosters to give the rocket more power and capability to reach orbit. This booster sat at the bottom of the first stage as a little add-on with 2 Rocketdyne XLR 89-5 engines, which put out 341,130 pounds of additional thrust for 135 seconds. So now we have covered the launch vehicle, let's cover the mission profile. At T-0, all 3 engines ignite, lifting the Mercury Atlas and John Glenn to space. At T plus 2 minutes and 10 seconds, BECO or booster engine cutoff occurs and separates from the first stage, and at T plus 2 minutes and 33 seconds, the escape tower is jettisoned. At T plus 5 minutes and 20 seconds, SECO or Atlas Sustainer Engine cutoff. The capsule reaches orbit velocity at 17,557 miles per hour or 7,844 meters a second, and at T plus 5 minutes and 24 seconds, capsule separation from the Atlas. John Glenn is in orbit. He does 3 orbits around the Earth, and after that, Glenn would fire the retro pack at the bottom of the capsule to slow down to re-enter the atmosphere. Once done, the retro pack is jettisoned and the capsule will fall through the atmosphere and then splash down in the ocean. So let's begin the recreation, and for the sake of the recreation and lack of orbital mechanics in Space Engineers, my recreation will go to 0G, move around a little, and then re-enter the planet's gravity, and then hopefully splash down on the ice. So let's go. Like with all launches, we start at the launch tower. Now this launch tower is crude, but it's roughly what the Atlas launch vehicle would have had. Obviously the Mercury Atlas is at the tower. The tower is connected up. So let's go up. So obviously I am John Glenn today. Going up the tower. There probably was an elevator, but we don't have elevators in Space Engineers, so let's just bear with the stairs. So once at the top, the crew arm would then lower. I find the button. Leading out towards the Mercury capsule. Now this is a bit of a different design than the Mercury Redstone, and this design would generally be used for future missions. Instead of the arm going up, it would go to the side. So Glenn would then come down the crew arm, and then once inside, the crew arm would then retract. And with that, the Mercury Atlas is ready for launch. So, it's T-minus 3, 2, 1. We have liftoff. Engines on. Tower separation. And we are heading towards space. Beaco, booster engine cutoff and tower separation. Booster set was Seco as the Atlas separated from the capsule, and now the capsule is free to basically float around in orbit. We are in 0G, so technically orbit. John Glenn would spend 3 orbits going around, well, do 3 orbits going around the Earth, and on its final orbit he would then fire the retro pack. So we are quite a distance away from the planet because I think I overburned the Atlas. But essentially John Glenn would have full control over the pitch roll of the Mercury capsule, and he would do a few experiments. Apart from that, he would just enjoy the view. What a great view it is. So like I said, Space Engineers does not have orbital mechanics, so we're just going to have to rely on going up and down for the moment. Let's just say we have done an orbit as we have reached zero gravity. And now we are heading back using the retro pack to fire. And once we get caught within the planet's gravity, we'll then detach the retro pack and then face our heat shield downward and hopefully land where I'm facing. That's the plan. Right, we're now caught in the planet's gravity, so we're gonna basically detach the retro pack. There it goes. And we're gonna face our heat shield towards the Earth and let gravity do its job. And hopefully we hit the mark. Parachutes deploy. And with that, splash down in the ocean. John Glenn awaits rescue from the US Navy. Total mission duration, a little under 5 hours. John Glenn becomes the first American astronaut to orbit the Earth in 3 orbits. The mission is a success and it leads the way for new missions. The next 3 missions of the Mercury Atlas would be Mercury Atlas 7, Scott Carpenter on Aurora 7. His duration would be 4 hours and 56 minutes, basically doing the same as John Glenn. The next launch of the Mercury Atlas is Mercury Atlas 8 with Walter Marty Sakara Jr. in the Sigma 7 capsule. His flight time was 9 hours and 13 minutes. And then the last of the Mercury 7 would be Gordo Cooper in the Mercury Atlas 9, his capsule named Faith 7. His duration and the longest of the Mercury 7 would be 1 day, 10 hours and 19 minutes. He completed 22 orbits. So now we have completed the history of the Mercury 7 by doing the first astronaut in space with Alan Shepard in the previous video and the first astronaut to complete a orbit with John Glenn. We're not going to do the next 3 Mercury Atlas missions, because obviously they're basically the same up and down. So the next video will cover the Gemini project, which basically includes the Titan II missile, the Titan Agena, and the 2 manned capsule of the Gemini project. So stay tuned for the next in the history of NASA spaceflight. If you enjoyed this video though, feel free to hit the like button, don't forget to comment and subscribe. I am trying to reach 1,000 subscribers, and leave your thoughts on the history of NASA and what you enjoy about it. Until the next time, I've been Dr. Mickey. Thank you for joining me on this educational video. And until the next time, I'll catch you then. Cheers and goodbye.